Chris Pratt. I was on stream when I believe this thing first kind of started kicking. And people were asking me about how I felt about Chris Pratt. And I was like, what about him? What about Chris Pratt? And it looks to be that a lot of not just blue check marks, but of course the weirdos on those websites such as Twitter and such were very upset with Mr. Chris Pratt. Now, good luck in trying to find why they are upset. You kind of got to try to look at this paper trail, breadcrumbs, to try to figure out what's going on with Chris Pratt or why the hell people are actually mad at him. And I've picked up a lot of mixed things. Some people are mad at him just because, well, he's Chris Pratt. Saw a post, someone saying that his biography, which had nothing but like a scripture, and they said that it oozed of white supremacy, is what they said. Quite amazing. So, did some more searching, like what the hell is going on? Came across this idea that a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe actors and actresses had campaigned or wanted to do this video, rather, campaigning for Mr. Sleepy Joe Biden. Of course, Chris Pratt was not a part of that. So, you still may ask, well, what's the big deal? Good question. I don't know. See, Chris Pratt is rather apolitical. In the sense that he doesn't put his stuff on his sleeve, but it's assumed, and rightfully so, that he's not a leftist. Certainly not to the degree of most of his colleagues. So you may ask yourself, as I was asking, why in the hell are people upset? What's going on that has people so irate at the fact that, or really, what is that fact? And it goes back to what I had been saying long before this today. And that is that leftists demand allegiance. Okay? They demand absolute allegiance. That's how it works. That's how it's worked for a while. In that they absolutely expect you to abide by whatever it is that they personally believe in. That, of course, includes politics. You are expected to fall in line. You are expected to be a part of them. And in the event that you say, you know what, I'm not really with that, they will go to very great lengths to cancel you, to get rid of you, to ruin your livelihoods. That's what they're about, because they absolutely demand allegiance. You see, one of my biggest criticisms that I have of my fellow libertarians is that they have this weird kind of centrist thing going on where they want to be placed in the center of the Democrats and the Republicans. And in doing so, because they don't want the other side to feel as if they are part of the other side, they feel like they have to treat them as equals. Goes to show you why a lot of libertarians are politically, more so culturally irrelevant, because they have an inability to read the room. They aren't the same. Now, you can maybe say that they govern similar in certain instances, absolutely. But are they the exact same? Are their constituents the exact same? Are their supporters the exact same? Absolutely not. And your inability to understand that is why you are an ineffective communicator. They're not the same. And more importantly, they're not the same, one side is more so in control of a lot of the cultural things that we're involved in. Here's a hint. It ain't the Republicans and it ain't the conservatives. It's not. Take that for whatever way that you may, but it ain't the Republicans and it ain't the conservatives. That's not what it is. Those are not the people that are generally in control of these different things. I say this as a musician. I say this as a person that is involved in not country music. Obviously, I'm involved in more some metalcore and the hardcore stuff. Surrounded by a bunch of deranged leftists. The reason why Backwards, my band, stuck out like a sore thumb is because, well, we just weren't them from a political standpoint. And more importantly, we were open about it. We were admitted about it. It wasn't a secret. I'd get on stage, I'd say it. You've heard some of our songs. We are who we are. And ostracism is a real thing. We go to certain venues with other bands, of course, on tours, and you hear like the merch guy or the drummer or something like that, and he'd be like, wow, man, I agree with a lot of what you say, but man, we can't say that. And I ask, why? Knowing I know the answer. It's a difficult thing to put your neck on the line like that, but that speaks to the absolute issue. We are surrounded by these guys. It is a political monopoly. Chris Pratt is dealing with the same exact thing. And maybe some of you that are involved in whatever, I don't know, industry that you are in, it's probably similar in that you're surrounded by a bunch of deranged leftists. Or rather, it is acceptable to be open with your politics in the event that you are a leftist. If you are a Joe Biden supporter, there's no cultural kickback for being a Joe Biden supporter. The cultural kickback happens when you are a Trump supporter. Now, obviously, I'm not a Trump supporter, but I'm also not a friggin' idiot. And I can recognize that this isn't equal, guys. This is not equal. And this is how they've gotten away with it for many, many years. You wonder why this young generation of people are so adamant about socialism, or rather so supportive of it, want socialism, advocate socialism, are as deranged as they are. The leftists have been doing their work for a very long time. Okay? They have been doing their work for a very, very long time. It is not a new thing. They infiltrated your public school systems. I also call them indoctrination camps. A lot of people don't like that. It is what it is. But they infiltrated your school systems. They infiltrated your culture. They were open and embraced other forms of entertainment, whereas the conservatives for years had not neglected it. Let's be more honest, and this is where they messed up. We'll talk about this a little later in the show, and that they've utterly rejected. They've utterly rejected a lot of subcultures. You know, and the leftists, as they embraced them, they created these political monopolies that exist where we are now. And you wonder how in the world that it got their way. It didn't happen yesterday. They were on their job. So Chris Pratt is dealing with a lot of nonsense as people, surprisingly. Now, Robert Downey Jr., it's something that a lot of people more or less expect as a person that is going to defend their colleague in Chris Pratt. Robert Downey Jr., he's another one that hasn't really been that open about his politics or wore it on his sleeve like some of the others. Now, Mark Ruffalo, I was very surprised because that guy's insane. He's insane. But he did come to the defense of Chris Pratt, which in itself to me is surprising as all hell. But you wonder why we are there where we're at. What was the response? How could you do this? You're dead to me. They called them all types of names. They wanted them to die in the event that they dared support Mr. Chris Pratt. Now, again, what did he do wrong? They can't tell you. He was white, straight, and wasn't a leftist, at least not openly. And they did not like this. Now, if you're watching this on the live stream, which of course is still going to be available to you guys as the members. So if you become a Super Mac or above, you will be able to view the entire show, the video show, but you will be able to listen regardless if you're a member on wherever you listen to your podcast. forkandensake.com as well. Nonetheless, here we are. If you are watching this live, you are seeing the crazy amounts of things that people say to folks that dare to defend Mr. Chris Pratt as the mob came for him. They will paint you as the absolute worst person as you are seeing, as you're reading this. And he's against the LGBTQ, which means absolutely nothing, by the way. When they say that, anything short of gyrating with a behind in some parade is hating them, let them tell it, or denying their existence. Now, of course, Zoe Saldana, who is what you guys call a woman of color, was called that great word that I believe every black person that isn't a leftist has been called. Cool. Because she dared to defend Chris Pratt. That's where we're at. They demand allegiance. Now, this is a different take I want to have on this. This doesn't necessarily apply to Chris Pratt. This applies to some of the other colleagues, including Ruffalo and Zoe Saldana. This is what happens when you get in bed with this crowd. They're insane. Make no mistake. They're absolutely insane. And they will come for you no matter how much you try to appeal to this crowd. This is why you knock that stuff where it stands. You wonder why I'm so like anti-leftist, or rather why I'm as blunt, because that's how you have to be with this. You can't let this manifest where they get to pop off and just say whatever it is that they say, or rather not even say, excuse me, they can do physical harm to you and then think it's justified because you've allowed this crap to manifest itself. You have allowed it to grow. Because it's like, well, they just talk. No, they ain't just talking. This has been years and years of indoctrination that is starting to set in. And because you wanted to cater to them, you gave them a little bit of power. And when you gave them a little bit of power, here's what you got. You got insane losers who are coming for your neck just for defending who I think would be your friend. At minimum, he's your colleague. You know him to be a pretty decent guy. And now they came for you. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to cater to these types. It's not worth it to try to appeal to these types because they're insane. Call it what it is. And I think a lot of people definitely in recent years, or rather recent months, definitely post George Floyd, when you saw how crazy people were willing to get just because they didn't get their way. Hurting innocent people, destroying their livelihoods and their businesses, as your politicians went around and greenlit it and said, well, that's just how they respond. They're crazy. They're crazy. And that's why you knock it down where it stands. You don't sit here and allow that crap to manifest, because what happens eventually, the insane people take over the asylum. And that's exactly what they did. They took over the asylum, and now they running the show. So I would greatly encourage you guys to stop listening to that crowd. This does not apply to Chris Pratt. What I'm more so using this as an example, so you guys as the spectator who dare to be in the middle, how you view this, and you view what it is that we're dealing with. We also got a Mac in the chat. I do appreciate that. That wasn't even supposed to be on the show, actually. And I'm going to fix that while I'm live right now, because I can do that. Nonetheless, you have to understand that this doesn't end until people start not only coming out against it, but being as unapologetic as possible. I think a lot of people are a little flaky, a little milquetoast with it. That's not enough. It's not good enough. You've let it manifest for too long, so now you have to be as blunt as absolutely possible.